Bump, set, elevate. Elevation Nation, we have on a special guest. We're going to get into the story of how I met this young gentleman in a bit, but we have, I'm going to say it, we got volleyball royalty in the house. Yeah, Rob, I went there. Rob St. A former All-American, now, I'm going to say it, starting to become the face of, I know, U.S. volleyball, maybe even volleyball around the world. You are creating content, podcasts, videos, going to all the major tournaments when it comes to the various volleyball leagues and coverage. You're a bit of a celebrity now, and we get the honor and privilege to welcome you as the latest elevator in Elevation Nation. Rob, welcome. We are so glad you're with us.
Thank you, boys. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Parker. It's cool. Like, you guys have done so many of these episodes. I've been on your side of the camera and the microphone so many times. I can't remember a time I've ever been interviewed. So this is cool. I'm excited about it.
Strap in and get ready.
I'm pumped. I mean, this is great. I, first of all, love volleyball. It is an incredible sport that doesn't get enough love, at least in, I guess it's in New York City, it's a little bit more difficult to play volleyball, but I don't know. I love it. I love it every time. Beach volleyball is my thing. I'm definitely a better volleyball player than Sam, just putting it out there. I've seen him play. We used to play in Barcelona when we lived there for a while. He was always kind of the guy throwing the back, you know. Just saying. But Rob, I'm so glad you're here. I'm pumped. We're going to get into, honestly, a good amount of your story, but more than that, what you're up to now, how you elevate yourself. So it is Elevation Nation. We do start every episode the same exact way. I know you've listened to a couple.
Oh, yeah.
But we got to hear your elevator pitch. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Whew. So, great question. It's a difficult one to sum up, as you guys obviously know. But this might sound like a crazy take, but I'll explain it, and it comes from a place of confidence and passion for what I do. And that's that I honestly believe that I am the best at what I do for the game of volleyball in the world. I think that it's a low bar. There's not that many people that do what I do. But talking about the game of volleyball, analyzing it, giving it to people in sort of an American context, because although we in America invented the game of volleyball, it probably is the worst country in the world as far as volleyball media and availability and accessibility to the game, which is something we can also get into. But I'm basically just a huge volleyball fan that is giving people now the coverage of the game that I wanted as a fan 5 years ago. And I do not think that there's anybody out there doing what I do better, which I'm proud of, but I take that really seriously. And I like I said, like, if there are people that love the game like I do and want to follow it the way that I wanted to follow it 5 years ago before I got into any of this, then I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
One, I don't think it's cocky at all to say that you are the best at what you do. I love that. I think all of us have to have a little bit of this confidence that drives us and makes us who we are. So, spot on. I think it's funny. We have another elevator in the nation who kind of had a similar path that you had. His name's RJ Kaminsky. We will certainly make an intro to you, but RJ started as a huge fan of lacrosse and started filming content of lacrosse and was behind the camera just filming players in the PLL. Then he started getting recognized by kids on the field and in the stands that wanted to get in his videos. Now RJ is essentially the face of the PLL, right? Doing all the media behind it. And so I think it's really cool. There's all these niche sports out there. Not that volleyball or lacrosse are niches. They're huge. But you find this place where you can be the best and you excel at it. And so I'm excited to get into that story, Rob, with you and learn more about that path. But I do have to bring up, because it's too fun not to tell this story. Can you go into how we got you on this damn show in the first place and how we became friends?
I would love to. This is great because just this week, because like you talked about on the episode that I just listened to. I don't know if it's against your rules to pull back the curtain of how far in advance you guys record the show, which I'm very impressed by. It's what is it? Today, as we're recording, it's November 15th, 2023. I have no idea when this is going to come out. I'm actually kind of excited. But that's it's how good you two are at what you do, almost 300 episodes, which is awesome and enviable. But this week, the show that I've been listening to a couple of your episodes since I met Sam and since I've learned that I'm going to be on here. And the one that came out this week was when your boy, OG Elevator Number 1, Joey Lane, interviewed the two of you. And that was funny because in the intro of that show, you guys were talking about the fact that Sam was about to, the weekend after you recorded that, about to go and officiate a wedding. And where I met Sam was at that very wedding that Sam officiated. That Sam and I are from basically the same area, just a couple towns apart in the North Chicago suburbs. And the wedding that he was officiating, I was standing up in early October. And pretty early on in the rehearsal, because I was standing up there, trying to not get in the way, and Sam was practicing his ceremony, which, by the way, was outstanding. I gravitated to that kid pretty quickly because I'm like, you know what? I feel like I feel like we have a lot in common. I just kind of recognize somebody whose personality is probably similar to mine. Sure enough, after the actual wedding, after Sam knocked his ceremony out of the park and was able to become a patron at
some alcoholic beverages,
some beverages, which I totally relate to because I also officiated a wedding for a friend of mine in the summer 2022. So I know that all too well. I was very disciplined. I waited until after my ceremony was over to get the beverages flown. So as Sam and I were waiting at the bar after his ceremony was over, I'm like, so how'd you get into this? He's like, well, I feel comfortable public speaking. I've got a podcast. I'm like, all right, we got to get into this because I have one as well. Let's talk about this. What's your podcast about? And he's like, well, it's called Elevation Nation. We get people on, like young adults trying to figure out the real world and make the most out of it and create a network. I'm like, I'm in. Get me on the show. And a month and a half later, here we are.
That's awesome. And even better that you listened to the episode with Joey, and that's the first thing that I think we talked about, right? It was one of the first things. That's so funny. That's amazing. I feel like life works that way. It just so happened, it just so happened that Sam was officiating a wedding, which I heard went really well from Sam.
But yeah, he was outstanding. I mean, the same thing that Sam said in the episode you guys just did, that I guess you're one of two best men at Parker's wedding coming up, right? And
he will not be officiating my wedding, by the way.
But he's giving a speech, right? He's
he
jointly
will be giving a speech.
And he said he's not nervous for it at all. And I feel that because for my wedding ceremony that I officiated, my now wife was way more nervous for me than I was. I'm like, yeah, this is what I do. This is easy. This is no problem. And I would be curious if anybody was at both. I doubt there was any. But to compare me and Sam's performances, we can compete on it a little bit.
That's true. I mean, knowing Sam, he brought the confidence. Maybe he blacked out, like he says, as he always does.
Brought the dad jokes. I love the dad jokes.
Okay. Brought the short jokes that
the short jokes
pretty rarely. That was good. Yeah.
Like the classic volleyball wedding. Players, man. They're all huge. All the guys standing up were like over 6 foot, and then I was there.
I love it. That's awesome. So I do have a question for you, Rob. Around like you said, you love volleyball. I think you probably love it because you played it, right?
Yep.
Growing up. Talk a little bit more about that. What is your relationship with volleyball? Where did it all start? And then, I know you said you played in college up until now.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You were talking about lacrosse earlier and like you guys being on the East Coast. I'm in Chicago. Volleyball more than I think any other sport in the country. That maybe there are a couple. I think lacrosse belongs in this category. Volleyball is incredibly regional, especially on the men's side, the boys' side of the men's side, because you cross one state line, depending on where you go, people in that state aren't even aware that males have even played volleyball before. It's pretty insane. So like where I grew up in Chicago or in the Chicago suburbs, boys high school volleyball is it's an official sport and it's a decently big deal, and there are a lot of good players, a lot of good teams, a big club system, and like everybody is aware that boys can and do play volleyball. But where I went to college, I went to Purdue in Indiana. most people in the state of Indiana had never even heard of the concept of boys playing volleyball before. Depending on where you go, that can totally happen.
Wow.
It's
I'm shocked
so,
because
it,
I went to an all boys school and we had a volleyball team, and that was the most popular sport to go watch. It got rowdy.
that's because, as a hill that I will die on more than any other, volleyball is the best on court or on field product in all of sports. It's the best there, and I have a good content series idea that I'm working on about comparing it to all the big sports and pissing off fan bases of all the major sports and telling them why volleyball is similar and better to their on-court sports products. But volleyball is sick. Like, volleyball is so awesome, and I believe that so firmly to my core that volleyball is great, and that the more people, like, all you really need to do is see it, and especially you need to see it in person. That's when you really get it. As Parker probably knows, like, if you guys were packing the house at high school stadiums like that, and games get rowdy because it's so fast, it's so physical, it's so energetic by its very nature that it lends itself to being a great sports product. But there are just so many people that don't know about it. The men's game in particular, boys and men's volleyball, has a huge uphill battle no matter where you go. Girls high school volleyball is the #1 girls participated sport in the country. It's not even close. All 50 states obviously have it and sponsor it.
Wow.
It's a tremendously big deal at the NCAA level.
Yes, it is.
The Big Ten Network, their third most watched sport behind football and men's basketball, is women's volleyball. Women's volleyball is a big deal at the NCAA level. It's a big deal everywhere. So would it surprise you guys to learn that, given how widespread volleyball is on the girls' side, less than half of the states in the U.S. sponsor boys volleyball at the high school level. Less than half. And I just got lucky that I was born and grew up in a state that had that, like Illinois and the Chicago area.
And we're talking about like in a gym, indoor volleyball.
Indoors,
we're not talking
yes.
about like beach volleyball.
Yeah. So beach and a format that I really like, we play on the grass in the Midwest. That's a bigger deal than you think it is as well. But I'm talking about indoor 6-on-6 like that, which is... Oh, yeah, I don't know about beach. I think girls' beach might be becoming a high school sanctioned sport in some places. Definitely not boys. But, yeah, indoor 6-on-6 is what I'm talking about. Any girl anywhere in the country who's in high school can play volleyball for her high school. Boys, less than half of the states even sponsor it on the state level. And even within that, like, it's not super easy. There's no guarantee that the high school that you go to, if you're a male, will allow you to play on an official volleyball team. So it's tough. We got an uphill battle going. But I happen to come from a place that had high school volleyball. I played 3 sports initially in high school. I was football, swimming, volleyball in that order of the seasons. And by the time I got to junior year, it was pretty clear that volleyball was what I liked the most. I didn't get into it nearly early enough, nor was I good enough early to get recruited at all, because again, so few opportunities to play volleyball as a male in the country. Like I said, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women's NCAA programs. There are so few men's Division I NCAA volleyball teams that they can't even rank a top 25 in the country. They can't even rank a top 25 in the country.
What?
I'm shocked.
That is so weird.
There's a top 15, and that actually is Division I and Division II combined. D1 and D2 combined play in the same NCAA championship, and D1, D2 combined, they don't have enough teams to rank a top 25. So that's how thin my sport is. That's part of
why do you think it is? Do you think it's because the tall guys go to basketball or football? Like, what do you think it is?
Long answer. I don't want to get into it. The short answer, it's honestly, it's Title IX. The rule that you have to have the same number of men's and women's sports in the NCAA kills men's volleyball, because for some reason 50 years ago somebody decided that men's football is going to equate to women's volleyball from a Title IX perspective. And so there are hardly any universities that have that, because when you have football is a men's sport according to the NCAA, which I actually disagree with. But typically the counter on the Title IX level to men's football is women's volleyball. And so because you have to have the same number of sports, men's baseball, women's softball. men's basketball, women's basketball. Swimming goes both ways. Gymnastics actually is a tough one, and that there are more women's programs than men's. Lacrosse, you can have both. There's so many sports that you can have both, but for some reason the decision was made decades and decades and decades ago that women's volleyball was going to be the Title IX counter to men's football, and so there's just no programs because football's the moneymaker. You obviously can't, like, if your university can have a football program, it will, and that just because of the math and because of how Title IX works, there just aren't any chances to play men's volleyball at the Division I level, and that has just kind of trickled down to the high school level for one reason or another. There's not very many opportunities to play, and there's definitely no opportunities to see it at the highest level. So nobody really knows. It's just like, it's not about the athletes are getting plucked to different sports. It's just that nobody knows about it in most cases.
So, Rob, your passion for volleyball is quite apparent, and I think we could talk for hours on why it's either the best sport, and I have theories on how maybe with flag football being in the Olympics now, this may open up opportunities for men's volleyball to not be tied with women's volleyball to football, but I digress. We can talk about that later. I want to get back to something that I think you've been a little too humble on, which is you were deciding in high school, all right, volleyball is going to be my sport. And to your point, you weren't recruited, but you ended up going and following your dream for volleyball, leading you here to this point. But let's talk a little bit more about, dude, just like you said, you're the best in the world at what you do now for the sport of volleyball. You were damn good and worked really hard to get good at volleyball. Talk to us about that process a little bit.
That's a pretty good point. Volleyball, I think, has a very high floor of the skill that it takes to play. Volleyball's hard. It's really hard. There are like nothing that you do in volleyball is really like transferable from other sports. A lot of the movements are really specific. It's really hard because you can only touch the ball for a split second at a time. So developing control takes a long time. But I wouldn't say I got good at all until I went to college. And I went to college at Purdue that didn't even have an NCAA men's team. Like I said, there are so few that you can't even have a top 25. But what that does create, the nationwide collegiate club circuit for men's volleyball is sick. It's really loaded. There's a lot of very good players at like Big Ten schools that don't have NCAA men's volleyball teams, but they have club teams. And you practice 2 or 3 times a week. You travel 3 or 4 or 5 times a semester. You play in the Big Ten conference. You have a national championship tournament. But like, it's not the same commitment level as an NCAA like Division I athlete. But it's as close as you could get for what we had. And that's exactly the level that I played at, which was perfect for me. Because I still was getting better at volleyball at the time I went to college, and just the format of club was so much fun, and we were all doing it because we wanted to. It wasn't because we were on scholarship. It wasn't because we were like we'd just been training our whole lives, and it's just like the lifestyle that we knew. Everybody there was playing volleyball because they wanted to, and the competition level was very high. We routinely played like NAIA Division III teams and stomped them. Like the top level men's college club volleyball is very good. So it was when I got to college and I got in the gym with the NCAA Purdue women's team. Because a lot of time what they need is 2 or 3 or 4 guys who are just is a fact, they're more physical than a lot of the girls that they can practice against. And what we would do is we would go to practice, we would sit in their film study as they would be scouting for an opposing team. And we would then simulate one particular player that they were about to play against. So if Purdue is about to go play Nebraska, for example, who's unbelievable at women's volleyball, the coaches would tell me and a couple of my other club teammates who were in the gym with the girls, like, all right, you are going to be this player. Watch what this player does on film, and you're going to execute this player's game plan so that we can do the best we can to practice against something that looks like the team we're about to play. And so in doing that, I, as a player, had to learn how to do a lot of different things. And volleyball is pretty specialized, but I learned how to play at least 3 different positions, and then I figured out a 4th kind of later. And it was just touching the ball a lot in college that just got me to get better in just kind of on the fly. I wouldn't say I was really coached or trained hard into becoming a better volleyball player. I just kind of did it and figured it out for myself. And having what I would say is a high volleyball IQ really helps, and that definitely helps me now is like understanding the game. Helped me to get good at the game, and it helps me now to get good at talking about the game too, because I understand what I'm looking at, I understand what I'm trying to do. So yeah, it was at Purdue and just kind of on my own initiative, and just because I wanted to play the game, I wanted to touch the ball as much as possible. I wasn't forced to. I wasn't under scholarship. I wasn't anything like that. I just wanted to. I wanted all the volleyball in my life that I could, and I still do. I still play a good bit. But that was kind of how I got to become a good enough player that I think handed me off to being able to talk about the game at the highest levels like I do now.
And Rob, that role that you had on helping the women's teams, right? Picking a player and having to learn that position and their tendencies and cadences. Again, we are kindred brothers, and I'm glad we met. It's the same exact role that I had in high school basketball.
Yep.
I'm not tall enough to play. So I picked one of the players on the other team, and I learned what they did, and I tried to simulate that. And so this is a cool thing about elevators, especially in Elevation Nation. Elevators lift themselves up, but just as importantly, they lift the people around them up. And this goes back to an analogy that I won't break your neck on, but this concept of a ladder man, right? You being at the bottom of the ladder, trying to lift up the people with you. And in your case, it was the women on the team that you were trying to help get a little bit better with your skill set. And so that is what I find really interesting about elevators is, yes, they're trying to get themselves better, but really they're trying to make the other people around them better. And so obviously that happened a ton for you at Purdue and within volleyball and how you were playing there. I want to fast forward a little bit because we're not a professional volleyball player now. We have a real life and a real job, but we still have that same passion for volleyball. And you've been growing, to your point, your followers, your knowledge of the game even more. Can you give us, because I couldn't keep up when researching you, an overview of all the different leagues and clubs and teams and podcasts and shows that you're involved in?
It's I can try. So there's two main things that I'm doing right now. The first is I work for a league called the Volleyball League of America, and the Volleyball League of America, or the VLA, is trying to started on the men's side, now has expanded to the women's. It's got a heck of a lot of reach. A professional volleyball league in the United States, because like I said earlier, the U.S. invented the sport, but we have never once had a league where players can go and play and make money. All the elite level volleyball players in the world or that are American, they come out of the NCAA, men's or women's. If they want to go and make money playing, they go overseas. They go mostly to Europe, some Japan and China, and some Brazil, but mostly Europe. I'd say about 90%. That's where the money is, and so that season runs like I'd say October to April, and then they come back in the summer. And if they're really good, then they play for the national team, and the national team plays like you wear your country on your chest and you play a handful of tournaments every summer. But something that has never been possible is for an American volleyball player to play volleyball at home at the professional level and make money for it. That's never happened. There have been attempts in the past, and actually right now it's a very crowded landscape because the VLA that I work for is not the only entity trying to do this. There are 2 on the men's side and at least 3 on the women's side. I think there are 5 different businesses trying to create professional volleyball in some form right now. But mine's called the VLA. It started on the men's side. It was born from a previous league like in 2017, 18, 19-ish that I had also worked for. The VLA split off from that other league in the end of 2019 and had big plans for a season and a new format and a big splash in 2020. And then the obvious happened. In March 2020, the obvious happened as we had all these plans to produce volleyball that summer and all these travel plans that I had booked and all this stuff. All of a sudden there was nothing when the COVID pandemic hit. And I had been on a couple other volleyball podcasts before that my volleyball buddies had done, but I had never had one until 2020, right after the VLA had been founded and had like made its public announcement splash. But we had no content because we were in the middle of a pandemic and we had announced ourselves as a league, but had not produced any volleyball yet because we couldn't. So the thing that actually kept the media side of the league afloat for the first several months was a podcast that I started. The league asked me to do it. They're like, hey, we have we have nothing that we can do right now. We can't play. Can you get players on and interview them in podcast format and like do 1 or 2 shows a week for as long as you can until we can play? I'm like, yes, absolutely. So started a show called The Deep Corner. Deep corner is an area of the court. It's a good shot to hit in volleyball. And I had a bunch of people on, told a bunch of stories, and kind of kept the league afloat until we could get volleyball on the court. And we did. Now the VLA is going into its 4th season, kind of the 3rd full season in the beginning of 2024. And it's nationwide. There's 3 competitive divisions. We started women's volleyball last year. There's north of 50 teams in the league at all the different levels. So it's grown a lot. And I run basically all the media, all the broadcasts. I commentate a lot of the games, especially at least the most important games. I'm learning how to delegate coast to coast this year and have people learn how to produce and how to commentate, so I don't have to go everywhere because there's so many teams now. But the VLA is a big one. It's very much a passion project because I believe that American volleyball players should be able to play at home and make a living. They shouldn't have to go overseas unless they want to, because it's a cool opportunity to get to go to Italy, Germany, Poland, France, whatever, if you want to go over there and play. But there's so many things about that lifestyle that are really difficult. And there's no reason, in my opinion, that volleyball can't thrive as a sports product in the U.S. Because, like I said, I believe that it's the best on-court sports product in the world. So that's
a lot of these guys and girls have other full-time jobs, right?
They don't.
They don't. These are full-time gigs.
On the VLA level, they're not. Everyone who plays in my league has their own full-time gig. But there are many, many American volleyball players that being a volleyball player is their full-time job.
Because they go overseas, or they play, nationally, and they
right.
Wow. So
that's all they can. That's all they can do right now while we try and get a financial structure behind the league that we're building to give them a place to play at home and make money. So yeah, the people playing in the VLA right now are very much like the weekend warrior types, like guys and girls that have played overseas in the past that came back home because they wanted to, because it was difficult to be away from their friends and family, because maybe there was some burnout there with doing volleyball as your career, or they just they have full-time jobs and they love the game and they're good at it and they want to play on the weekends, or whatever the situation is. The VLA is a very open model. We want as many people and as many teams and as many places to play as possible. And eventually, we want the top levels of that to be making some money. So that's the goal there.
Very cool. That's awesome.
I have a random sports question, and then I do want to get into more like Rob, your mindset, but I'm just like very interested. Are you guys looking at all at like the PLL model?
100%.
I mean, like they are taking a more niche sport and blowing it up in terms of partnership deals, making money, and being able to play their athletes. I assume that's influenced your guys' thinking.
For sure. Yeah, the PLL for lacrosse is a big one. The AUDL for ultimate frisbee is a big one. Even the genesis of the MLS 30 or so years ago is a good model. There's a lot of other sports leagues out there that are similar, that have similarities to what we're trying to do, and yeah, we absolutely want to learn from those as much as we can. PLL for sure. Like I follow all these leagues, and I'm aware of what's going on, even if I don't watch so many games. But I'm super aware of what they're doing in media and partnership, and like how their formats work and how their geography works, and just kind of how all that goes down. There's a lot to learn from other sports for sure.
Well, I think the PLL just transitioned
part
of their model away from the tour-based model to now the city-based model, which initially I think they were like full on, we're a tour-based league, and now I think it's pretty cool that people will have their own respective leagues. Teams.
I think that in my opinion, for a team sport, a city-based model is the only way. It's the only way.
Interesting.
It's the only way to build a fan base that cares. Otherwise, other than really liking one individual player and caring about the team that player happens to play on, the only way that you're going to really cultivate a fan base and put butts in seats at games is to have a city model, is to have a team be from a city, connect to the city, create relationships within the city, like give people in that city a reason to root for you because they feel like you represent them in some way. I and the VLA feel passionately about that as the move for team sports, definitely. And what's funny, you brought up the tour-based model. The one American entity in professional volleyball is actually on the beach side, and it's called the AVP. The AVP is a professional beach circuit, very tour-based. And beach volleyball being in teams of 2 is very different from indoor being in teams of 6 and rosters of like 12 or 14, and just how you build the product and the system.
And
but
climate too,
and
right? Like if you're
too.
trying to get people, you want to kind of flow. Like Chicago beach volleyball is lit.
Oh yeah,
but you can't do it pretty much all year.
You're absolutely right. The AVP has a stop in Chicago. Actually, they play it on Oak Street Beach like in early September, and it's awesome. It's so much fun. But even the AVP, a beach volleyball league with teams of 2, just this week, same as the PLL actually, just this week, announced that they are incorporating a team and city-based model in what they're doing.
Very
so
cool.
I'm not the only one who thinks this way. Like a city-based model, I really think is the only way for a team sport, a team sports league. I think it just has to be city-based. And yeah, the PLL transitioned to that this week. AVP beach volleyball transitioned to that this week. I think that's going to be the standard.
There's only one team that can tour, in my opinion, and that's the Harlem Globetrotters. They're the only ones.
Love that.
The only ones. Everyone else has to have a city.
I mean,
the
if you
Savannah
think about
Bananas of baseball, like if your
true.
product is weird and unique like that, it can work. But even
Savannah
they
Bananas.
technically, they have like a city attachment. Technically, they play home games.
Technically, Sam, have you ever been to Savannah Bananas?
Dude, they're the hottest ticket in town. My parents,
they're
think,
so
went to
hot,
one.
dude. They're selling out like Fenway Park now and Wrigley
Yeah,
Field.
they are.
And,
It
like,
is,
incredible.
it is a hot ticket in Savannah.
So have you
is
been?
the team. No, I've never been.
Have your parents gone?
No, but my dad is now the proud season ticket holder to the Savannah Ghost Pirates, the hockey team.
Oh,
Sweet.
very
So,
cool.
If anyone needs tickets, let me know.
Is it just as weird as the Bananas? Do they have all the
No,
weird rules?
it's actual hockey, which is
Oh, dang
honestly
it.
kind of disappointing. I wish it was weird.
That's pretty funny. Wow, I have to ask your dad about that. So, I mean, talk about mindset a little bit. Like, there's a reason why, Rob, all the people, continue to love volleyball, right? You live and breathe it among all the other people who live and breathe it. And, even though they're not making probably a full-time living, they love it. What is it about volleyball that you think people love and that you can learn from and that you translate into, your everyday life as well? So 2-pronged question for you.
I think there isn't a sport that I have noticed. Obviously, I'm very much in the volleyball community. I know it. I know what it's like to play at the different levels. I know the scene. I don't know. I'm not in the scenes for the other sports in the world, or in the country. But as far as I can tell, post college, I don't think there's a more vibrant adult sports scene post college in the country than volleyball. I think there's something about volleyball that fosters a passion for it, that there are more people that keep playing organized volleyball after college than maybe any other sport in the country. Maybe. I don't know that for sure because I don't know all the other sports and I don't know what their scenes are like. But like in Chicago, for example, where I live, the adult volleyball scene here is unbelievable. It's so good. There's so much talent and there's so many levels and there's so many chances and different formats to play. Like you can always play if you want to. Indoor, sand, grass, co-ed or single gender. Doubles, triples, fours, sixes, like whatever. There's so many places to play. Leagues, tournaments, whatever. And there are just so many people that all the time they just want to play volleyball because there's just there's a community aspect to it that is awesome. It's an extremely social sport. So many people in the summers in Chicago, Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, like all they do every weekend is go to whatever volleyball tournament is nearby, and that's just like where they hang out, and that's just who their friends are. There's such a social aspect about it. There's a community. There's a love that just keeps people playing after high school or college or whenever like their last really formal chance to be on an official team was. People keep doing it. They keep doing it. I don't exactly know why, but it's 100% happens. People just keep playing. And something that I really want to do is get those people who love to just keep playing volleyball. It's what they love to do. It's all they do on the weekends. I want to get those people to watch. I want to get those people to watch volleyball. That translating volleyball players into volleyball fans is hard. Nobody's been able to pull it off before. But like I said, when people see volleyball in front of them in person, it's impossible not to get hooked. It's so fast. It's so physical. It's so explosive. It's very like conceptually easy to understand, but also extremely technical when you really know what's going on. I think it's a phenomenal blend in that way. People love it when they see it. But getting people, even people who know volleyball, who play it every weekend, to go out of their way to find ways to watch it is hard. So that's something that I'm trying to do to bridge that gap somehow. I hope that answered at least like half of Parker's question.
I thought it was pretty good.
Rob, with your passion for volleyball, and obviously it's oozing into the ears of people listening to the podcast and people who see your face lighting up on YouTube when watching this. This is still a passion of yours, not your full necessarily time gig. So for Rob, the human being, what has it been like now? You know, COVID kind of happened. You were able to take over and start that podcast. You now are involved in so many different endeavors around the sport of volleyball. How does it feel to kind of be the face of volleyball in the U.S.? And have you been kind of putting together more of a strategic plan of like, all right, this is where I want to be in a year from now for my career in volleyball?
Great question. Yeah, I think there comes a point in everybody's when a hobby becomes a passion, then there might be a chance for some of those passions to become a business or maybe a career. I've thought about it a lot, and the other half of what I'm doing in volleyball most these days is for a channel called Volleyball Source. And Volleyball Source is a YouTube channel that I co-run with this Canadian guy, my Canadian buddy Everett, who lives in Toronto. He's had Volleyball Source for a very long time, and it's seen a couple different iterations. But I joined on about 2 years ago, and we started a podcast called the 9x9. And the 9x9 is our show every week that we talk about whatever's going on in the international game, like the very, very highest levels, like European club volleyball, national team volleyball, men's and women's, some NCAA, but all indoor. And that has led to doing some pretty cool things. That got me in with it's called the CEV. It's the UEFA of volleyball. It's the European governing body of the game. They run a bunch of tournaments. They govern the sport in Europe, and volleyball in Europe is the biggest in the world. That's just where it's the most popular. So I got to do a bunch of content for them. I got to commentate the Champions League, which the Europe volleyball has a Champions League just like soccer does. It's the best club competition in the world. So I've gotten to call games for them. I've gotten to call games on the international level for Volleyball World, which is basically the FIFA of volleyball. They govern the sport globally. And so I've gotten to travel internationally for that. I've gotten to have my voice over the best players in the world. I've gotten to do what I really have always loved. That's the level that I fell in love with when I was in high school. I like stumbled upon on TV miraculously an international volleyball game that the USA men were playing. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. I love this. Why don't more people know about this? And because it just so happened when I tuned into that when I was in 9th grade, they had phenomenal broadcasters. They had great commentary. And that commentary really helped me learn what was going on. Helped me learn what was going on, like technically on the court, but also like in the global scene. It just created my appetite for the game that I still have like 13, 14 years later, because what I saw when I was in high school was so engaging that, like I said earlier, the volleyball fan in me that grew throughout high school and college, even as I was starting to become a decent player, that I was still like following every bit of volleyball that I could all over the world. I wanted to see the highest levels of the game. I wanted to know what was going on. That now, post-COVID, and now that I've gotten a little bit of a network with Volleyball Source and to get to call games for the CEV and Volleyball World and all these things, if there's a 9th grade kid out there that likes volleyball but doesn't know it and stumbles upon a game that I'm calling, if I'm going to be the make or break point with him continuing to want to watch volleyball or not, I take that really seriously, because that kid could grow up to be me. That kid 10 years later could be the next best commentator on the planet. Like that kid could get as obsessed with volleyball as I am only because of watching a game that I called. That means so much to me. It means a huge amount to me to be as passionate as I can be about the quality of what I do, just in case the right person watches. And in the same way, just in case the right person is watching what I do every week, day in, day out, if the right person is watching and the right connections are made, then I can turn what I do right now into a career. And I'm very interested in doing that. I've thought about a lot of ways to do that. I've spent a lot of time this summer trying to get connected with some of the right people, but what I'm learning is it's not necessarily about how good you are. It's about who you know and who you can get to care about what it is that I'm doing. And that is a world that I'm learning a lot about, is the connections and the industry of sports media and volleyball, more so than like just creating the content. But I will never let my foot slip on the pedal of making the content consistently and the quality of it, because I care so much about everything that I put out, and anybody who's listening being engaged, being educated, feeling like they want more, feeling passionate about the game, and because that was me. Because that was me like 13 years ago as a high school kid that listened to a game called by people that cared.
Wow.
And that was so important to me that I remember that every time I put the headset on.
That's amazing. It's like you're grounding a grounding device that you have. It's like a way you shift your mindset as you go and click in. Like, I got a game. I'm just like, I am talking for the younger Rob listening in, which is unbelievable and amazing. And I love what you said around like the idea of networking and you know, especially maybe it's in the sports industry, but I take this theme that you just mentioned across the whole board. It is about who you know, of course.
Oh yeah.
But beyond that, it's how can you get those people to know to care? That's so interesting. That's a great way to put it. You know, for people to understand, you might know a lot of people, but understand why you are a good person to do this, or they understand your goals, your vision, what you bring to the table, and get them like, oh, wait, Rob, yeah, actually, you know what? We're looking for something just like what you bring to the table, which I think is really, really awesome too. So thank you for sharing that.
Dude, sports broadcasting is a tough one in that category too, because like as far as being a play-by-play guy or an analyst on a live game, there is absolutely no quantifiable metrics for success. There is no way to translate the quality of your commentary to the success of the product. It's just impossible. Like it's just a very difficult thing to quantify. It's a very difficult thing to get people to care about. Like, what I do makes a difference. But I know to me that what I do makes a difference to me, because like I said, like in 09,
if you
when I
get
was
one
a freshman in
DM,
high
Rob,
school.
like that, like Parker and I used to say this a lot. We just want to help people, right? Parker and I felt very isolated and alone when we graduated from school and had no idea what the hell we were doing with our lives. And we were like, if we do this and our moms listen and one person DMs us and says thank you, like, it will make all the hard work so worth it.
100%.
Guess what? When we got that first DM, I remember calling, like screenshotting it, sending it to Parker and calling him, being like, dude, holy shit. Like, someone we don't know listened to this and said thank you. And now it's really cool. We get emails and DMs all the time of people saying like, thanks, man. Like, I was really struggling with young adulthood, and knowing that you and Parker also went through it really helped us. And so, yes, it's not like super quantifiable of how many lives you're going to impact in their future, in the butterfly effect of who's going to play volleyball and become a commentator because of you. But just knowing that you're making some small positive impact on the next generation, like, makes all the hard work so worth it.
For sure. And that's when we get into my mental motto later, that's really why I keep doing this over and over again, because to be honest, this year, this calendar year for me has not been great. Other than so I got married in April. That was awesome. That was a huge highlight, a tremendous highlight. Definitely
Very glad that was a positive note. We're glad leading with that. I met your wife. She's lovely. Okay,
yeah,
good.
Yeah, Caitlin's fantastic. We're super happy here about like 6 months later. Other than that, kind of been a tough year for a handful of reasons, and one actually is volleyball. Like, it's been very trying on my patience about the opportunities that I had once gotten are now starting to dry up, despite the fact that I still am as passionate and as committed to doing what I think is best for the game as ever. There just have been breaks that haven't gone my way, or that haven't gone Volleyball Source's way, or that haven't gone the VLA's way. Just like things mostly out of my control that have been disruptive to the career in volleyball media that I want. And that sucks. But like you said, what I always come back to is the quality of what I do being for the fan that I was 5 years ago, like creating the content that I wanted 5 years ago. I'm always going to keep doing that because I think the game needs it. And I know that I'm very, very good at it, and people are now starting to watch and listen to my show consistently. And our show's coming up on 2 years this month, and about 100 episodes. And Volleyball Source, the channel, had an awesome summer. We got to do a full international tournament broadcast on our channel, which did huge numbers, hugely successful, great feedback. Like all this stuff, as much as some of the bigger picture things are closing doors this year, there are windows opening in the form of people that get connected and people that care and people that keep watching, and that sort of thing will always keep me passionate about what I'm doing.
Hell yeah. I mean, Sam and I say it all the time. It takes knowing who you are at your core to align with what you want and what inspires you. And when you align who you are, what you want, and what inspires you all together, whether it feels like a big day, a small day, a good day, a bad day, you can go to bed saying, wow, that was an elevated day. And you're going to wake up the next day and continue to live and breathe what you want to do and continue to make yourself better in this world, but then also inspire and help and make other people better.
It's the truth. All right, Rob, we've talked a heck of a lot about your story, your passion. I mean, again, I'm just going to say it, like, just oozing through the microphone. I want to move us into our next section, our rapid fire section. So think of this as, you're warming up, peppering the volleyball. I'm going to do some quick hits right at you.
Good research there, Sam.
Thank you so much. I played in 8th grade. All right. So we got some quick hitting little digs at you. Another one.
I see what you did there.
Keep throwing the puns.
See what you did there.
Okay. I'll stop before Parker kills me. All right. This is our first one. Rapid fire, off the dome. What is your favorite volleyball memory?
Ooh, player or fan? Or either?
Either.
Player, the second Big Ten championship that we won at Purdue, 2015. How we beat Minnesota in the final. It was electric. Very hard trophy to win. We that was the second of 2 in a row. Before that, Illinois had won 9 in a row, which is absurd. And we took it away from them, and we got this disgusting, like, 25-year-old metal cup trophy. And obviously, what you're going to do with that when you're a college club volleyball player is you're going to drink beer out of it. And that, as metallic as that tasted, it tasted extra good. But as a fan, there was a match in 2014 that I loved. It was the USA winning a tournament called the World League. It was USA versus Brazil in the final. We were sick. We won the match 3-1. Won the tournament. We being the US. And then that match was what made me what made me realize I wanted to be a commentator, because I'd been following along with that entire tournament. And this commentator named Paul Sunderland, who's my absolute idol, was calling this game, and there was a certain play that Brazil, who had beaten the final, had been destroying people with all tournament, where this guy Lucas, giant 7-foot guy who looks just like Pau Gasol, he would run this lightning fastball behind the setter, and no blockers were ready to stop him. And there was a middle that the U.S. had named David Lee, who read that and shut him down a couple times in the final of this tournament. And I was watching with some of my Purdue teammates, and I was like, oh, guys, look at that. Like, somebody finally stopped the back one on Brazil. And then about 5 seconds later, Sunderland, the commentator, was like, oh, look at that. Somebody finally stopped the back one on Brazil. Like, okay, that's it. That's it. I know what I want to do now. So it's 2 answers there.
I love it. Amazing. All right, next one for you. What is your go-to volleyball commentator catchphrase?
Can I preface this really quick?
For sure.
Okay, so there's like an inside joke with Joey Lane, who is getting into calling games. And if you look, I just posted about Joey on my LinkedIn. My roommate, Matt, just commented what we want Joey's catchphrase to be, which is, Joey, don't kill me. I'm not going to do it justice, but that is disrespectful.
Love it.
So I'd like to hear yours, Rob, as well. Yeah,
dude, I actually have thought about this because I don't think that I have one, and I wish I did. I don't think of myself as being very creative at all. I just kind of like talk about what I see. So like coming up with something like that, it's just gonna have to happen.
We can help you with it. Yeah, I think there's one that's gonna be, if some guy like really soars up for a spike, you go, that guy is elevating.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you go, shout out Elevation Nation, subscribe. Elevation Nation _.
I'll get behind that one.
Elevation in volleyball is a big thing. Big thing.
I'm just saying.
Height and jumping ability, way more important than volleyball than basketball, by the way. Way more important.
The more you know.
I have been told, though, that I say the word absolutely a lot. Like to
Absolutely.
to give emphasis on things.
You're like that guy that does, I don't know if you watch Dungeons and Dragons on Barstool, but Tim Woods, he says absolutely.
I actually
he's
do know
hilarious.
about that guy.
Yeah,
I can't
so
say it
funny.
like him, though.
You'll get there. All right. Last rapid fire. Parker and I love reading. Elevation Nation knows we're all about the books. Do you have a book recommendation, Rob, for Elevation Nation?
I don't. I'm sorry. I'm useless in this category.
That's okay. All right. How about a movie recommendation or a show recommendation?
Ooh. Depends on what kind of show you guys like. There are two shows that are linked that I love and that I can't get enough of. They're both Canadian because as I've gotten to know my Canadian buddy Everett, who's my partner at Volleyball Source, I really like Canadian things. I like Canadian culture. I think it's hilarious. So there's a show on Hulu called Letterkenny that I swear is the funniest show ever made. And then there's a spin-off show from that universe called Shoresy that's all about hockey. And Canadian hockey culture is hilarious, and I love it so much. So go check both of those out. They're outstanding.
Okay. That sounds awesome. Canada's I like Canada. I was in Canada last year. And
Canada's great.
It's a cool place. It's definitely cold, and the people are way too nice for the New York City liking.
Yeah, you nailed it.
All right. We're at our last part of the conversation, Rob. We end every episode where we got to ask our new elevator what their mental motto is. And if you're a new listener of Elevation Nation, the mental motto is a phrase, a slogan, or a quote that our elevators live their life by. And I know you're prepared for this one. So, Rob, what is your mental motto?
So when I say it, you guys will get it based on what we've already talked about in this interview, and I'll explain it a little bit after. But it's be your own biggest fan, be your own biggest critic, and to do right by both. Be your own biggest fan, be your own biggest critic, but do right by both. I think that's huge. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of what keeps me going with all this volleyball media stuff is that I'm creating the content that the volleyball fan in me wanted 5 years ago. And you guys doing this podcast, I assume you've spent some time listening to the sounds of your own voice, and everybody has their own thoughts about that. It's actually never bothered me, fortunately. So I listen back to basically every show that we do and most of the content that I make. One, because I like it. It's funny, when you do a podcast, you sort of remember what you said, but also you don't at the same time. It's kind of fresh to you once you listen back to it when you're not in the zone. Do you guys feel that? I hope so.
I listen back and I'm like, what was I saying?
Yeah. So that's the thing. But I like listening back to the stuff that I make because I'm doing it for the fan that I was 5 years ago. I also am very, very critical of myself. I'm my own biggest critic for sure, especially when it comes to commentating a live game because I have super high standards for volleyball commentary. I think that it's hard. I don't think there are very, very many people who are truly great at it, and I'm very critical of myself when I listen back. But everything that I do, I'm trying to do for the fan and for the critic, and if I can make both of them happy, then I'm stoked. You guys see the guitars behind me. Sam, you've got one. I see it back there. There's a thing in music, I come from a music theory background too, and there's a discussion out there that how correct should your music be from a music theory perspective, but then there's one side of that argument that says if it sounds good to you, then it is good. That's ultimately the thing that matters the most, is that if it sounds good to you in music, then it doesn't matter if it conforms to, box rules from the 1600s. If it sounds good to you, then it is good. And that's kind of how I think in volleyball too.
And that's how the content creation is nowadays.
100%. Yeah,
there's weird stuff out there, but
sure.
It hits.
But if you believe in it, and I do, I believe in what I do. If you believe in it, then you're doing the right thing. That's the moral of it. If you believe in what you're doing, then it's the right thing, and you should keep doing it. And you should be a fan of what you do. You should be a critic of what you do. But if you believe in it, if you can satisfy the fan and the critic, then you're doing the right stuff.
Rob, I knew this was going to be a great episode. I knew we all were going to hit it off. Again, it just goes to show you never know where, when, how you're going to meet someone that's going to influence your life. And that's what's really cool about having the podcast is it gives me a fake-ass excuse to get new friends, and I certainly have one with you, and I know Parker feels the same way. We're going to have to continue our talks about sports and about life, and I am really excited to see you elevate with your catchphrase, but also your career within volleyball and outside of volleyball, man. You were a true elevator, and we are lucky to have you in the nation.
Thank you, boys. It's an honor. I love being a part of the show. Happy to come by any other time you need me, or if you guys want to watch some volleyball and come on my show sometime, let's do it. Let's make it happen.
Oof, that sounds great.
Sounds like we need a one-on-one battle. I don't know how you do that in volleyball. Me against Parker. We live stream it to the death.
We actually did that when we did this national team broadcast earlier this summer. Me and Everett played. It's a game called Short Court, where you play on like half the net and a much shorter version lengthwise, and you can play one-on-one, and we did it, and we live streamed it, and
that's awesome.
It was pretty electric.
Say less, Parker. I'm coming for your ass.
I'm down. Yeah, you're done.
I would.
You can beat me in
I'll
pickleball and
commentate your short court game, and it'll be electric.
So funny.
That'll be real funny. That's content, boys. That's content.
That is content. That's what we do. All right, Elevation Nation. Until next week. Peace. Okay.